Oh, good morning, Dale. It said Diana, and I was like, wait a
Yep.
minute, you're not Diana.
Yep, it's me. Now I need to make you the host.
You don't have to make me that. Well, I guess I have to make you a co-host, so there's no rush.
All right, well, I'm doing it right now.
How's it going? Did you have a good Thanksgiving?
I did. Looks like Bonnie has.
Oh, Bonnie and Kenneth. Oh, they're attendees. That's why. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, everyone's an attendee. We need to make Bonnie a co-host.
Yeah. Can you make me a co-host?
Yes. And Dale, co-host. Who is DCHC MPO? Is that Aaron? Let me let them talk. Aaron, is that you? Or is it Andy?
It's Aaron.
Okay.
I'm renaming myself now.
Okay. I am going to make you a co-host. Okay. Kevin, I will promote to Kenneth, panelist. Who's Sarah? Sarah seems to be in here twice.
Oh. I don't see, oh, attendees.
Hey guys, this is Bonnie. I think that's Sarah from CAMPO.
Okay. I think we have enough panelists that we can make staff panelists in addition to board members, or do we think that's not the case?
So it depends on how many board members show up. I mean, if CAMPO, if CAMPO gets most of their showing up, then
Yeah, we don't need to risk it.
yeah.
Okay.
Plus, we've got to make all the speakers panelists as well, right? Like David Price and Bo Mills and all them. So we've got some additional people there.
Okay.
Somebody making tea?
Do you hear like a kettle whistling?
Yeah. Oh, okay. Shoot. Why?
This is highly suspenseful right now, Aaron. One heck of an acting job. What's
What?
going on over there?
Well, so on our website, the joint board meeting notification is gone.
I can change that real quick. That's weird. I might have said it. It usually, okay. I'm just gonna go change it.
Okay. Yeah, all it's on there is Briggs Avenue Extension.
Versus.
And do we know if the Facebook Live link got fixed?
I didn't know there was a problem with the Facebook.
Yeah, I thought Andy sent something to KC yesterday. I guess KC had the Facebook Live linked to his personal page rather than to like the streaming.
The DCHC page? Okay.
Ah.
I can also check that. Oh, it expired. I should have set it to expire tomorrow. How's the sign up sheet looking? Is it just John Talmadge?
I couldn't, I was getting to the sign up sheet from the link in the.
Oh, okay. Okay,
so-
it should be
oh,
updated now.
I'm refreshing. There we go. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
John Talmadge is the only one.
Okay.
Do y'all have anybody signed up to speak on the CAMPO side?
Hey, it's Bonnie. No, John Talmadge is also on our list, but doesn't his name have one L?
No, it's two.
Oh, okay, I never realized that. So yeah, it's just John here too.
Okay. Cool. Thanks.
And that's so far. I'll check it right before 9. All right, this is Bonnie. I'm running to grab my coffee and stuff. Be back.
Okay. Yeah, the Facebook link in our on our webpage now links to our Facebook site, so I think we're good there.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning, this is Bo Mills.
Good
Morning,
morning.
Bo. Will Allen here.
Hey, Will, how's it going?
Very well. Hope you are.
I'm hanging in there.
Dick Sears here.
Hey, Mayor.
Fifth manager.
Good morning, Michael Granis from Clayton here.
Good morning. Lisa Mathis is with you.
Good morning. This is Sig.
Hey, good morning, Sig. It's Will.
Hey, Will. Thanks for your text this morning, comments.
Yeah. Looks like a good meeting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hello, Sig. This is Ken Marshburn. Can you hear me?
Yes, Mayor. Good to hear you, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. I look forward to the meeting today.
It's going to be a good one.
Good. It always is when you're chairing.
Thank you, sir.
Don't let that go to your head, Sig.
Never.
Oh, that's too late. It's too late.
You're right.
Good morning, everyone.
Hey, Wendy. Good morning.
Hey, Wendy. Will here.
Morning, Wendy. Michael.
Hope everyone had a good holiday.
Yes.
Yeah, we did. Thanks. Didn't attend any super spreader events.
Good morning, everybody. Charlie Reese from Durham here.
Hey, good morning, Charlie.
Charlie.
So is everybody else also unable to turn their video on, or is that just me?
No, it's all of us.
Okay, great.
Okay, all elected officials should be elevated to panelists, and panelists should be able to turn their camera on. Is that not the case?
That is not the case.
That is not the case. Okay.
It's not working.
All right. Let me.
Is that because I'm sharing my screen potentially? Should
I don't think so. I think it might. Let me see if I can individually go in and if I do ask to start video.
I think I just changed it.
There you go. I can see Will now.
Yeah, it's working now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, I see
Okay.
Will.
I'm about to start the live stream, just so folks know.
I think we're okay.
Let's see here. Yeah,
Congressman, I can see and hear you.
I'm good.
Hey, good morning, Congressman.
You can hear me, see me?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
I was
sir.
having a little trouble here. All right, good. Thank you. I guess we're okay, Jess.
Okay.
Thanks.
Call me if you need anything.
Yeah, it's working.
Morning, old boss. How are you, sir?
Hello there. Been seeing you quoted in the paper. You're the real pundit these days.
Oh, yeah, right. Just trying to stay out of trouble. It's always a challenge.
Good morning from Lee County, Congressman.
Hey, good morning.
How
All
are
right.
you?
Fine. Good to see you. Oh, boy. So we got good group here, looks like. I still can't get the banner on my screen. I got the screen on my screen. The joint, the message. Are we going to get where we can see each other?
Yes, when they, right now, the, what do you call it? The PowerPoint is up. So I think that when that goes away, the presentation piece is up. When that goes away, we'll all be able to see each other.
I see. Okay. All right, good.
I can stop sharing for now if we want to do that. There you go.
There we
There
go.
you go. Now you're talking.
Yay.
Oh, yeah. Hey, Sig.
Yeah. Hey, buddy.
Hey,
Hi.
Sid.
Okay.
Morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Hey, Mayors.
Hey.
Good morning.
Hey, Wendy.
Good morning,
Morning.
everyone.
Morning, Vivian.
You see everyone.
Hey, Wendy's on. Hi, Wendy.
Good morning. So Aaron and Chris or whoever's in charge, are we ready to kick off the meeting?
I think we are whenever you are. I would bring up the, I'll bring up the, whenever y'all are ready, I will bring up the PowerPoint and we can get started.
Well, should we just start off with the roll call, maybe so we can see everyone?
Sure, we can do that.
Okay.
Yeah, and the way we were going to do this in the efforts to save time is to have a staff member read off who they see is here from each organization, one from DCHC and one from CAMPO. And then if you do not hear your name called, please let us know. So Philman, if you would go ahead and start for DCHC.
Well, then I'll just first kick off the meeting just to say hello, and then we'll do the roll call. So I just want to bring greetings to everyone. Hi, I'm Wendy Jacobs, Chair of the Durham County Board of Commissioners and Chair of the Durham Chapel Hill Carborough MPO. And it's wonderful to be with everyone this morning. This is a marathon meeting with many people joining in. We're really excited to have this hour and a half for us all to be together. We've got a great agenda. Thank you to our awesome staff, and we have some important guests with us this morning. And I will kick it off to my co-chair, Sig Hutchinson, and then we'll do our roll call. And would love to see everyone's faces when we do the roll call as well.
Thank you, Wendy. I'm Sig Hutchinson, Chair of CAMPO, and just very briefly want to thank everyone for being with us. We have got a great meeting today. I really want to thank staff for putting together the materials. I know you've had a chance to look over them, and I'm sure you're as impressed as I am with the information that's going to be brought forward today. Also, I said real shout out for our guest, Congressman Price, and my good friend Bo Mills. I mean, this is top of class in terms of talent we've got on the Zoom today. So I hope everyone had a safe and great Thanksgiving. Hope you had a lot of turkey, and we look forward to a great meeting. So thank you. Ready for the roll call.
All right, well, starting with the DCHC, Wendy Jacobs.
Here.
Jen Weaver.
Here.
Pam Heminger.
Here.
Karen Howard. Michael Parker.
Here.
See, I know Renee Price couldn't make it today. Charlie Reese.
Here.
Damon Sowles.
Here.
Pierce Freelon.
Here.
Valerie Jordan. Mark Bell. Heidi Carter. Javiera Cabrera. James Crawford. Michael Fox. Lydia Lavelle, Lisa Mathis,
Here.
Amy Ryan,
Here.
John Sullivan. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, good morning. It's Shelby with CAMPO. I'm going to go through our board members that I see on the call, and I'm not going to read all of our board members. So I will read the ones that we have here present. And if you don't hear your name called, if perhaps you haven't been promoted appropriately to show up on the screen, then if you'll let us know in the chat box, we'd appreciate it. So I have Michael Granis with Clayton.
Here.
Thank you. Dick Sears with Holly Springs.
Present.
Thank you. Bob Smith with Anger.
Here till 11.
Okay. Ronnie Curran with Creedmoor.
Here, that's Roseville.
Oh, I'm sorry, Rollsville. Don't know what I'm thinking there. Sig Hutchinson with Wake County.
Here.
Will Allen with Go Triangle.
Here.
Tim Karen with Granville County.
Good morning. Here.
Good morning. Ken Marshburn with Garner.
Yeah, I'm present.
Thank you. And Vivian Jones with Wake Forest.
Here.
Thank you. That concludes our CAMPO roll call.
Okay. Wendy, you want to take the public comments? I don't hear Wendy, so I will just move on to comments from the public. I understand we have one individual who signed up to speak. Is that John Talmadge?
Morning, can you hear me?
Yes, you're good to go, John.
Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity to address you this morning. I wanted to start with a gratitude for the DCHC board that earlier this summer adopted very aggressive goals for their 2050 MTP, including elimination of disparities in access to jobs based on race and income, elimination of carbon emissions by 2050, and Vision Zero, elimination of deaths and serious injuries on our streets and roadways. And I was looking at the policy priority documents and the revisions discussed by the staff, and want to encourage you to be looking at that document with that lens. I want to tell you a quick story about some work we did at Bike Durham this summer with the neighborhood of Bragtown and some housing authority residents who wanted to get to a nearby park that was less than 1.5 miles away to experience the park and do some bike riding. And in coordination with the community engagement staff, the transit agency, the police department, the fire department, and the Durham Bike Co-op, we were able to get about 20-some kids to the park to do a ride, which was great. But the point is, all of the resources it took to get them access to a park that is so close to them because it's unsafe. They live in a part of the city that does not have sidewalks. It has high speeds and state roads around them. It does not have good transit access and does not have bicycle facilities. And as I look at your policy priorities, I see a lot of things that we like and support, but I think that if we're not also looking at some of these smaller projects that are around low-income neighborhoods of color and bringing them along with funding sources, that we're going to continue to leave them behind as we invest in major regional projects, whether they are roadway projects or transit projects or bicycle facility projects. We need to have resources and funding to bring those smaller projects for those neighborhoods along with the higher visibility, the higher dollar tickets. And so as you look at STI, I think that my other concern was that the comment in the document is that STI is sound. Unfortunately, STI continues, while it may distribute funds in a more rational way, it continues to build projects that increase VMT, increase carbon emissions, increase the deaths of pedestrians and bicyclists. And so I would ask that as you look at investing in TDM, as you look at investing in active transportation and public transit, that you look at all the sources, including STI, with a harder eye. And the last thing that I'll mention is just for Representative Price, because he's on the call, that we sent a letter earlier last week to your office encouraging you to sign on to Representative Chai's letter saying that transit should be funded 50-50 with highways in the federal transportation bill. We encourage you to sign on to and co-sponsor that resolution. Thank you for your time, and I hope to see ongoing focus on carbon emission elimination, death and serious injury elimination, and elimination of disparities based upon race and income. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, John. We are in the public comment period of our meeting. Is there anyone else from the public who would like to speak?
No more signups from CAMPO.
No more signups from DCHC.
Okay, thank you. Then we'll move on to item number 3, which is the joint MPO policy priorities. And the first item there is my sheer privilege and honor to introduce Congressman David Price. We all know what a giant Congressman Price is for our state and our region, but let me just take a minute, because this is very important for you to understand the significance of Congressman Price. First, we all know that he is our congressional representative for the 4th District, which is all of Orange County, the majority of Wake County, and southern part of Durham County. What you might not know is he did his undergraduate degree at Chapel Hill and then went on to Yale, where he earned a Bachelor of Divinity and a PhD in political science. And before he ran for Congress in 1987, David was a professor of political science and public policy at Duke University. He's also authored 4 books on the Congress and the American political system. Now, also important for you to know is David is North Carolina's only member who sits on the House Appropriation Committees and serves as the chair of the Transportation, Housing, and Urban Development Appropriations Subcommittee. He also serves as the subcommittee on the Subcommittee of Homeland Security and the Subcommittee on State and Foreign Operations and Related Program, and also serves on the House Budget Committee, and is also recognized as a foreign policy leader and serves as the chairman of the House Democratic Partnership, as well as an outspoken advocate of Middle East peace. We are so thrilled and honored to have Congressman Price with us today. And Congressman, we look forward to hearing your comments. And if we could take
thank you, Sig. It's
take down
a pleasure.
Yeah, let's take that. There we go. Sorry, Congressman. Sorry.
Thank you, Sig, and thank you, Wendy, and thanks to all of you. This is the A team here. A lot of longtime friends and certainly champions of solid transportation planning, diverse transportation development, and the integration of transportation with other community needs. I really value the work you do and want to be your partner, of course, at the federal level. And have a couple of specific assignments today, which I'll carry out, I hope reasonably efficiently. But I want to say at the outset that I do value the partnership and have always seen the transportation and housing work that I do on appropriations as uniquely relevant to my district and to Central North Carolina. We, as we speak, are negotiating out the fiscal 21 THUD bill, transportation HUD bill, the funding for this next year. We're hoping to stitch that into an omnibus bill next week. and be only, quote, only 3 months late in the fiscal year in getting a full budget in place. I'll say a little more about that, but we were able to get some additional funding. We worked on this year after year, some additional funding for intercity rail. And as you know, North Carolina has big plans along with the state of Virginia for good passenger rail service from Charlotte to Washington. And with this grant that we got by virtue of that CRISI money very recently, we're putting more money into CRISI, the federal program, and we're allowing that money to be designated for a corridor purchase. So we're a good step further toward getting that service in place with this funding. We're fully funding transit new starts, and of course, our fondest hope is that one of these days, not too distant future, the Triangle will be an applicant for that funding, and we will have, as part of an overall diverse transportation system in the Triangle, we will have a major transit component, along with the small starts that are already underway. And so it goes. We have I think a large stake here in this region in federal transportation and housing policy and funding. And I'm hoping in my term of service to be able to make that connection real and to make it pay off for our region, because we need to have a solid federal partner as you go through your planning process and as we develop our transportation plans for the region. My assignment today is to just bring you up to date on a couple of areas of federal policy. One has to do with the idea of a stimulus bill coming out of the COVID crisis and what kind of role infrastructure broadly conceived might have in that bill. And the second question has to do with the authorization of transportation policy, the so-called FAST Act. The 5-year authorization has expired. It has been renewed for 1 year, as I'm sure you know, with the current continuing resolution. We appended to that a 1-year continuation of the FAST Act, but that puts the day of reckoning off until sometime later in 2021. In the meantime, the question is, what kind of transportation reauthorization can we pull off, and how ambitious can it be? And I'm hoping it can be quite ambitious. And I know you got on your mind what the local governments and MPOs can contribute to this. And I, of course, hope that contribution can be substantial. Let me say first a word about COVID and COVID relief, since that's very much on our minds, and it does have also transportation and housing components. Since March, we've had plummeting revenues for transit services, local transit agencies, state DOTs. You all know that. That has threatened service. It has stalled projects. Airports and airlines are in a similar position. It's not good. Amtrak is in a similar position, asking for billions in assistance. So we clearly need a continuation of recovery legislation. We had the CARES Act early. We passed the CARES Act, passed it on a bipartisan basis. I mean, we did argue about it, but in retrospect, it looks like a model of harmony, because the bipartisan cooperation that we had on the CARES Act has since gone away. And the follow-on legislation, the HEROES Act, HEROES 1 and HEROES 2, which was a scaled-down version, both of those have been passed by the Democratic House, but have not been acted on by the Senate under Mitch McConnell's leadership. The CARES Act did include some targeted assistance for transportation. There was backfill money for transit agencies and transit programs. There was, as there was on the housing side, I'll concentrate on transportation. There was Amtrak money. There was a pretty good menu of support for offsetting this COVID impact, and that is also in the HEROES bill. As the partisan divisions have deepened, people have taken to characterizing the HEROES legislation as some kind of wish list. But I always say, just look at it. Where's the wish list? I can give you a wish list if you want one. This is not a wish list. This is very practical backfilling of expenses that have been incurred as a result of COVID and offsetting the revenue fall off. And so it's mainly a continuation of the CARES Act, but it has become much more difficult to pass. There's still hope, I think, in this lame duck congressional session for an even more scaled down version of HEROES to pass, but that's going to have to be negotiated out between the Senate and House, and hopefully with at least concurrence from the outgoing president and the executive branch. Now I need to be clear in transitioning from COVID to these other questions that COVID relief is not it's not recovery. It's not a stimulus. We sometimes call it that, but it really isn't. COVID relief is relief. And that's true of the CARES Act. It will be true of the HEROES Act when we pass it. We're talking about a holding pattern here. We're talking about what it will take to keep transportation networks functional, not what it'll take to address decades of deferred maintenance or to advance new projects. That's not what COVID relief is about. We certainly need COVID relief, and we need it to include a transportation component. But there's a big difference between a COVID relief package and a recovery package or an infrastructure package. I assume we all understand that, but sometimes the debate gets a little out of hand, and you might think this relief legislation is more ambitious than it is. It is not. It is, I think, absolutely essential. I think it's a disgrace that we've not passed it before now. And the cliff is going to be even steeper if we don't pass it by December 31 in terms of the programs that expire. But it is what it is. It's a relief package. Now, when you get beyond that and think about next year and think about the economic component of the pandemic and the kind of recovery that's going to be required, then I think you're talking very clearly about a more ambitious package. The analogy that comes to mind is the Recovery Act of 2009 that we had at the beginning of the Obama administration to get us out of the economic downturn, the Great Recession. There was a major infrastructure component of that bill, but it was not nearly as prominent, not nearly as large as it should have been. I won't go into that except to say that I think the historical lesson looking back on 2009 is that component was too small. There had to be some really hard bargains struck to get the 3 Republican votes we needed in the Senate. And the price that we paid, as you may remember, was a large amount of money going to the alternative minimum tax relief. And that money came right out of the hide of the infrastructure of this country. I thought then, and I think now, that was a very, very bad bargain. But we just need to make sure that when recovery legislation is considered early next year, when we begin to put this together, that infrastructure leads the parade, and that this is a major component that we insist on, and that we insist on pursuing bipartisan cooperation for, because we are going to have to have that. There is an appetite, I think, in the country for a major infrastructure package with investment in a wide range of transportation modes, transit, highways, rails, ports, et cetera, as well as efforts to tackle the larger challenges, transformative projects, as we call them, like Gateway in New York and New Jersey. Those things need to be on the agenda. There's also talk of Tiger grants on steroids, along with a renewed focus on vehicle electrification, mitigating climate change, boosting resiliency. I think it is going to be very important, whatever we do in the way of a recovery package and a transportation component, to build in these environmental features, these features related to mitigating greenhouse gas emissions. And there's a lot of ingenuity, I think, being exercised right now and with the Biden team and in Congress as to what those environmental features need to be. But they need to be an essential part of our thinking from the very beginning. There are some basic questions about what this kind of recovery package should look like. I'll just tick them off. You're familiar with them. What's going to be the size and the scope of the package? Should we utilize existing programs or create new ones? Should we focus on competitive grants or utilize existing formula programs? Should we focus on shovel-ready projects or shovel-worthy projects? You remember that term from 2009. I was always proud that in the North Carolina National Guard building there in West Raleigh, which also included emergency the emergency management, I thought we had a project that was shovel ready and shovel worthy. But those criteria do not always coincide. And so there's often a trade-off between shovel ready, in other words, very quickly turned around projects, and things that have a more enduring value. And then how do we pay for it? Big question. How do we pay for it now? And how do we pay for it in the future? I'm not saying these questions are easy. And I'm not saying that they have yes or no answers. These are going to be mixed approaches, I expect, that we take, but they are important questions, and we're going to have to come up, I hope, with an optimal mix of funding existing programs, many of which have been underfunded, but also creating some new ways on both the competitive and the formula grants, some new ways of building infrastructure. I think bigger is better when it comes to infrastructure planning, and that these are investments that are long overdue. Interest rates are incredibly low. We know in many ways this is an optimal time to get going on addressing our crumbling infrastructure. So I'm in this position on the appropriations side. I am going to push, and a lot of colleagues are pushing as well, that we need to lead next year with a robust infrastructure program, make it a centerpiece of our agenda. And as I said, that would be in contrast to the secondary place that infrastructure played in the 2009 Recovery Act. I also think, by the way, that we need to conceive of infrastructure broadly, not just transportation, but certainly broadband and housing. There are many needs that can be addressed under this broad rubric. The elephant in the room is whether Biden and our Democratic leadership in the House can expect any bipartisan cooperation. A lot depends, of course, on the balance of power in the Senate. You all know about the critical Senate races on January 5th. But whatever the leadership of the Senate looks like, there's always the filibuster. There's always the danger, I think, that the other side kind of settles into a kind of economic fundamentalism and refuses to cooperate. We did not get a single Republican vote for the Recovery Act in 2009. That is not acceptable. I mean, we have to work on both sides to try to bring things together. I would hope that infrastructure is one area where that is relatively more feasible. And these are very polarized times. We all know that. I'm not naive about that. But I do think with Joe Biden and his history, we do have the possibility of a cooperative approach on this. And I would hope infrastructure would be the testing ground for that, just how far that bipartisan cooperation might go. So that's the best answer I can give you as to the prospect for a COVID relief effort morphing into a recovery effort and having a major infrastructure component. The second question I was asked to address was about reauthorization of the FAST Act and what we would expect on the routine or the regular authorization front. This been continued for a year under the continuing resolution. I certainly don't want to get back into the situation where we're reauthorizing the FAST Act for 3 or 6 months at a time and postponing the question of long-term reauthorization. I hope, in other words, that this 1 year extension is it, that at the end of that period, that is by September 1 of next year, we can have a new serious major reauthorization in place. We're trying to get a head start on that in the House. Earlier this year, our Transportation and Infrastructure Committee put forward HR 2. Peter DeFazio, the chairman, very aggressive on this front. It's a comprehensive reauthorization proposal. It's called the Invest Act, and it was paired with some additional infrastructure investments and passed, as I said, on this summer as HR 2. I think that's a good blueprint. I think that's a good marker that we've laid down for initial Democratic position. You know some of the highlights. I'll just briefly remind you of a few. $494 billion total over 5 years to make infrastructure investments in surface and rail transportation. That's a 46% increase over current infrastructure investment levels. It has a new emphasis on prioritizing the state of good repair and maintenance of the federal highway program before building new roads. It has important provisions to mitigate climate change, including a new greenhouse gas measurement requirement for state DOTs. And it has a historic $60 billion investment for Amtrak and intercity rail. So and I and my subcommittee had a good deal of input as Peter put that proposal together. Meanwhile, the Senate Environment and Public Works Committee has also passed a highway bill this year. That's a hopeful sign. It was bipartisan. Doesn't go nearly as far as as the DeFazio proposal, and it hasn't made it to the Senate floor, unfortunately, but it does include some provisions on climate change and resiliency, and that engendered bipartisan cooperation. So I take that as a good sign. There is a catch on the Senate side, a jurisdictional catch. Other committees have jurisdiction over transit, rail, and highway safety titles in the bill. And so that additionally complicates the challenge of getting a counterpart bill to the DeFazio bill through the Senate. So that's in the works. We are hopeful, as I said, of avoiding short-term extensions and doing a serious job with this next year. The broader infrastructure package is, this may be the vehicle for that. And of course, the Council of Governments and MPOs and other interested parties need to track this closely and offer input, figure out ways to organize and offer input throughout. Finally, let me just briefly mention our annual, or return to that question that I started with, the annual appropriations process. It is continuing to chug along. We talk about our THUD bill in the House as a down payment on this larger infrastructure program, and that's I think an apt analogy. We've had good success in the last 3 years. Once we can reach a budget agreement, and I should say now that that need to struggle over budget agreements is mercifully now gone. Now that the Budget Control Act, which has to go down as one of the worst enactments ever. This was the post Tea Party victory in 2011. The Budget Control Act put these sequestration level funding caps on our efforts for 10 years. We're just now getting out from under that. We had to overcome that each biennium with a 2-year budget agreement. But we did that, and for the last 3 years, we've been able to make some good down payments on all transportation modes and on the housing side as well. That continues in this bill I was talking about before, the 2021 bill that we're now negotiating, and I hope to continue to be the kind of the vanguard of additional investment here. And again, we conceive of it as a down payment, but at least it has to pass. At least it does happen. And that can't be said of these authorization proposals. And So, and you know, the major authorization efforts are still going to depend on revenue sources, which is of course a major source of the absence of bipartisan cooperation. Meanwhile, we do have good bipartisan cooperation on our bill. We're talking, and I hope we'll talk favorably about the return of earmarks, or what we now call congressionally directed spending, which had been banned since the Republicans took control in 2011. That I mention that because I think that's especially relevant to you and to our state transportation department. I think if we're doing earmarks, we need to do them in a very transparent way. And it lets me and other members be effective advocates, more effective advocates for our state and districts. But it helps to have local partners. I know back when I first came in and first started getting a few earmarks in the transportation area, we got money dedicated, for example, to the widening of US 64 across from Ashboro to Cary. We got money for widening 86 and connecting to I-40 here in Orange County, and a number of projects. But I never freelanced on those. I always worked with local authorities and with the state DOT, and tried to use earmarks in a way to further the overall efforts, and I think we did that. But there is a premium on those at the local level, the local and the state level, being ready for that, and having bite-sized projects in mind that that do fit the specs for earmarks. The same is going to be true in the case of a recovery package. I tell you, the success we had in getting that National Guard building erected in West Raleigh, the real story on that is that General Ingram and the North Carolina National Guard were ready. They were more than ready. We had talked about that for years and had done all the planning and done a lot of the preliminary studies, and bang, we were ready to go when the Recovery Act money became available. I'll give you another example. Raleigh to Charlotte train service. You know, that was for the first time in years, there was money, serious money, $8 billion for intercity rail service in a recovery program. Well, I can assure you the feds did not look around the country and say, wouldn't it be nice to have Raleigh to Charlotte train service? The fact is that we had worked on Raleigh to Charlotte train service. Governor Hunt made that a project. Bo Mills remembers this very well. We built up that service. I pursued earmarks for years to get that state Amtrak service, get federal support for that. And so when that federal money became available in 2009, you can bet we were ready to go for it. And we did go for it. We said, look, we're gonna get that Raleigh to Charlotte service where it needs to be. We got $500 million, and we have done just that. Temporarily suspended, unfortunately, because of the pandemic. But we're good to go on Raleigh to Charlotte, and we're going to be good to go on Raleigh to Richmond. But there is a premium, and that's why I'm stressing this with you. Those past examples show us that there's a premium on being prepared, on having done the planning, and as I said, having bite-sized increments available for whatever that are adapted to whatever the available funding sources might be. That I think the small starts and new starts mix in transit has a similar character. I applaud the decision to not just wait for the big comprehensive plan, but to go ahead with Dearborn Avenue, go ahead with MLK Boulevard in Chapel Hill, go ahead with these small starts applications and begin to chip away at this. Although we all want to see a good new starts proposal one of these days, and hope that it'll be there, and I hope the federal funding will be there when we develop it. I'll stop with that. Those are the best answers I can give to the questions you directly asked, but a little gratuitous advice as well on how to prepare for these funding opportunities when they come along. Happy to respond to any comments or questions, but thank you for the chance to visit the meeting.
Well, Congressman Price, thank you so much for being with us today. I mean, it's just, I don't think we could be listening to anybody who has, less of an important role right now, being chair of the Housing, Transportation, and Urban Appropriations Committee, and just all of your decades of experience working with transportation, being an incredible partner for all of us here in the Triangle. And we're really grateful for your knowledge, your experience, your partnership. You gave us a lot of insight in your comments, a lot of messages about what we need to be thinking about as we look ahead. And we really look forward to working with you on a number of the regional projects that we are working together on, our 2 MPOs. And so I know we do not, unfortunately, have time for comments, or for additional questions in our agenda. What is the best way for people to follow up with you, Congressman Price?
Well, we're happy to communicate. We're communicating online. We're setting up Zoom meetings when we need to. So I invite, and we're in touch with a lot of folks on this call already, and just invite you to get in touch with our office as you normally would, by electronically or by phone, and let us set up whatever the appropriate way of communicating will be.
Right. Well, I hope if you can stay on with us at least for
I will.
a little bit longer, because the whole purpose of this group of our joint meetings is exactly what you were talking about, which is us, working together. And there are a lot of legislative priorities that we are partnering with, and it would be great to have you listen in on that discussion as well. So thank you so much again.
Thank you.
And next we have at the state level, other great partners here with us, Bo Mills, who is the executive director of the North Carolina Metro Mayors Coalition, representing 31 mayors and cities, and also a new role, right? Bo, you are also now Director of Urban Affairs for the League of Municipalities. So you are wearing 2 hats at once. And then we also have Kevin Leonard with us, who is the Executive Director of the North Carolina Association of County Commissioners. And we know that you partner together, Kevin and Bo, and also just each of us who are representing municipalities or counties know how important both the Metro Mayors, the League, and NCACC is to all of us, and how we work together. So we're really grateful to have you with us as well. And I'll first turn it over to you, Bo, and then love to hear from you, Kevin. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Commissioner Jacobs and Commissioner Hutchinson, 2 good friends and real leaders in transportation and public service. And we're really honored to be with you. I'm mostly honored to be with my friend and Kevin Leonard, who is the Executive Director at the Association of County Commissioners. We're going to go through some slides real quick. Aaron can pull those up for us. We're going to go really fast because I know that you have some really extraordinary things to talk about after our presentation. And I'm really impressed with your transportation policy priorities that you have worked together on. So we want to leave time for that. But real quick, next slide. We're just going to quickly, I'm just going to walk through some slides, and Kevin will jump in and make sure I get it right. And then we'll stay available for quick questions and answers. Next slide. Just at the electoral level, the most important thing is that you understand that after the election, there was not a lot of change at the state level. As you can see here, the Council of State, a good indicator of statewide elections, all the incumbents were re-elected that were running for re-election. Next slide. And you can see here that North Carolina remains a purple state in many ways. While it remains purple, there weren't a lot of changes. The only new members of the Council of State were those that were running for open seats. And you can see here that our top 2 vote getters, one was a Republican, the Commissioner of Agriculture, and one was the governor. So we can see there that a lot of changes, perhaps but not a lot at the end of the day. Next slide. And Kevin will add to this, but I just want to point out to you, at the state level, there was a lot of thought that maybe there would be some changes in the leadership of the state legislature, but the end result was not the case. And in fact, the majority picked up 6 seats in the House. The majority party lost 1 seat, but that was mostly due to the fact that that's a couple of the Senate seats were redrawn and changed the makeup of those. So we can see there wasn't a lot of changes. Kevin, do you want to add anything about the sort of big picture at the legislative level?
Thanks, Bo. And I just want to echo, it's really great to be able to present with Bo. And thank you so much, Commissioner Jacobson Hutchinson, for inviting us to be here. And what a delight it is to hear Congressman Price, your comments from your level. So thank you for sharing all of that. Yeah, so the night of election, I probably for many of us who are the political, I speak for myself, the political geek that I am, on election night, I'm watching the results come in and the next morning talk with our team at the association. And that's exactly what we said. It's like, okay, nothing really changed at the state level in terms of the makeup at the General Assembly. And so I think that's sort of going to give us the position of working status quo at the General Assembly as to how we have been doing things. It gave us some clarity as to how we're going to proceed moving forward. We'll get into it a little bit later about how I think that the General Assembly is going to react to a lot of the things that Congressman Price just mentioned as things flow down from Congress as we get into transportation issues. So just I'll underscore what Bo said there.
Yeah, next slide. One of the things that is really important to this group, both municipal and county officials, is to be engaged. And as things didn't change at the state level, we really encourage you as elected officials, local government elected officials, to fully engage in our legislative process. That is going to be one of the most powerful ways to affect some of the things that you have identified in your transportation priorities. Kevin, if you want to give them a 30-second update on where you guys are.
Sure thing. In fact, today, as we speak, our Legislative Goals Committee is meeting right now. We meet today and we meet on Thursday. So much like the league's process, which Bo will talk about, we have a committee process, very member-driven, to bring the issues forward from the counties. We had about 300 proposed legislative goals. They sorted through those committees. Our Legislative Goals Committee, as I said, is meeting today. Typically, and the commissioners on the call will know this, that from a county perspective, transportation is one of those things that's very important, and we talk about it, but from a governmental role, in quotes, the county doesn't have a lot of statutory authority on transportation issues specifically. We partner with our local partners, the cities, the authorities, and of course the federal government to try to get projects underway. That said, there are 2 proposed goals. I'll read them to you very quickly, just so you have a sense as to what our members are talking about. In our General Government Committee, this is the goal, very broad: support increased state funding for existing and new transportation construction and maintenance needs, and support legislation to ensure that the Strategic Transportation Investments, STI funding formula, recognizes that one size does not fit all, and that projects in both rural and urban areas are prioritized and funded. And then the second one that is being discussed related to transportation, and a very specific thing, is authorized maintenance bonds for subdivision streets. So talking about the subdivisions and bonds in building those subdivisions, if the builder were to go out of business, they're left without basic transportation needs in those subdivisions. So very specific things for counties and maybe the rural part of the county. So we're talking about that today. It goes to our board, and then in January we'll have a virtual conference to approve the entire package of goals, and then we'll go down to the General Assembly and try to get those things enacted. Bo has a similar process over the league.
Yeah, if you'll just next slide, Aaron. And this is the League of Municipalities policy development process. As you can see, we have had a number of Zoom meetings. Everybody has Zoom meetings, but we've gotten a lot of engagement from the league's membership. And I really encourage, as the the league's board of directors next week is going to be reviewing their potential policy objectives, and 4 of the 17 that have made it to the top level are specific to transportation. I won't go through them specifically, but number 1 was supporting an increase in public transportation funds for development and operations of public transportation in North Carolina. So we can see that multimodal transportation continues to be a priority for all the municipalities in North Carolina. The Metro Mayors Coalition that I work with will be focusing their discussions in January. And you can be sure that, as always, public transportation and multimodal transportation will be at the top of their list. And I really encourage all of you, both at the county and municipal level, to engage in that legislative goal setting process, because that's the first step in really getting things done at the legislature. Next slide. And so one of the things that we wanted to do real quick is just give you an update on where things are at the transportation in North Carolina. And we all know they have a short-term crisis, a funding crisis related to costs associated with natural disasters. They have some legal settlements, and then COVID, as we all know, has had a tremendous impact on their primary revenue sources, and the gas tax being the most prominent of those that have been impacted. And then they have the long-term problem that you all are well aware of, and that is the gas tax at both the federal and state level continue to be an inadequate and increasingly outdated revenue source. So those are two, one short-term, one long-term systemic problem. A couple of things to point out to you in the legislature. They did zero out their support for public transportation. The SMAP, the urban area support for operations, and the rural funds called ROPE, the rural transit operations, those were zeroed out. And the rationale in the legislature was that DOT received far in excess of those dollars from COVID relief. It was interesting to note that no other units at DOT other than the airports received aid from the CARES Act. So that was one of the, and we're very concerned about that. We're hopeful that we can change that. NCDOT board, House Bill 77, changed the makeup of the board. Some of you are aware of that. It removed the seats that the governor appointed that were set aside for subject area experts. There was for example, there was a seat set aside for public transportation, a seat set aside for the environment, a seat set aside for financial management. Those seats were done away with, and 6 of those 6 seats are now appointed by the legislature, 3 by the speaker, 3 by the president pro tem. So you now have a state board of transportation that has appointments from both the governor and the state legislature. There'll be a much more dialogue that takes place in the board of transportation. And then just one last thing to note here, while the short-term crisis that I mentioned above will certainly remedy itself over time, that long-term challenge of revenue is not going away without action at either the state or federal level. Next slide, Aaron. And just in this, I'll bring Kevin in on this. Just one thing to keep in mind, the immediate focus in the legislature is going to be them standing by, waiting to see what kind of aid comes from Washington, from Congress, from the leadership in both chambers of the Congress. They're not going to take much action until they see where that is. And once that happens, then they will work on a state budget. As you all know, we do biennial budgets. I think, Kevin, this year the Senate is starting the budget. Is that right?
I believe that's correct, Bo, yeah.
And after that, they will then begin. As you may remember, we have not had actually a state budget enacted in the last 2 years. They did a series of mini budgets, including a transportation mini budget, much more similar to what we see in Washington with the appropriations by groups of agencies. So that has been an interesting development. It's hard to predict how that might change in the coming year. And then just a couple things that on the budget that we're looking at from the league and the Metro Mayor's perspective, we want to make sure that we do replace those transit funds that were zeroed out, SMAP and ROPE. While it's not a huge amount of money, I think it's a real bellwether on what this legislature views as important for multimodal transportation. And then I will just say, as I look through some of your transportation policy priorities, this is the same legislature we've had for a few years. And I don't think there's going to be a lot of changes in their approach to things. So I think we're going to have to double down on being creative. And I think the outlook for new funding sources for anything, and transportation included, are going to be challenging. And even the idea of borrowing money. I know that, and Kevin can say a little more about this, the state Senate, for example, has been reluctant to use borrowing tools for infrastructure. Kevin, you want to add to any of that?
Yeah, I'll jump in there on the borrowing. You know, the top legislative goal for the association has been broadband and infrastructure. And we've been trying to get authority to build infrastructure for counties, and the cities have been doing the same. We've been floating the idea of a broadband infrastructure bond proposal wrapped with the construction for school construction. I know I'm off topic here, but to hear Congressman Price talk about it at the federal level, wrapping in, you know, infrastructure projects as a broad perspective, I think that's the right way to think about all of this stuff at the moment. I agree with that, because interest rates are very low. But there, in the North Carolina Senate, there is this feeling of just a roadblock against borrowing, period, whether it's transportation or whether it is broadband infrastructure or not. So again, going back to this beginning comments about we're in status quo, we are exactly where we were. I don't see a lot of shifting and changing, including the budgetary process that Bo talked about, the mini budgets, you know, the stalemate between the executive and the legislative branch. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. Normally you have a period of time when they come in January and they don't do a lot, and they're waiting for the numbers to come in. So I echo what Bo says. They're going to be waiting to see what Congress does on a secondary package and then react to that. We, local governments, would really advocate for flexibility in those fundings, those funds coming down from the Congress. And our hope is that maybe changing with President-elect Biden is that Treasury would loosen guidance on some of those things, or have it issued through Congress. So yeah, I would stop there. I did send an article from the Wall Street Journal to Commissioner Hutchinson and Commissioner Jacobs this morning that just highlights what Congressman Price was saying, that infrastructure is being seen as the place where there can be bipartisanship. And that gives me hope that we could see infrastructure, whether it's broadband or whether it is transportation, as a place where we can come together. It's an investment in long-term infrastructure in the United States, and certainly in North Carolina. Bo, I think we're trying to wrap things up. If I could just insert one very quick thing that is unique. This is inside baseball for counties and public transit systems. That I'd like to say to folks on the phone, on the call today, you need to pay attention to Medicaid transformation, because the way that the non-emergency medical transport affects your systems likely will have an impact on the bottom line in your finances. It's something that we're working hand in hand with the Department of Health and Human Services, because of our switch from fee-for-service and Medicaid to managed care. The transportation systems are going to be affected by the rate at which they are paid for these delivery trips on non-emergency Medicaid transport. Now, it's very complex, and I'm sorry all I want you to do is remember NEMT and Medicaid transformation, and look that up, and we're able to help you, provide more information. But it's going to have ramifications on systems all across the state. Bo?
Excellent, thank you. I'm just going to hit these key points real fast, and I don't know if you'll have time for question and answers. But going forward, as I look at some of the amazing things that you guys have put together in your transportation policy priorities, I just encourage you. This is more of the same in the state legislature. They are. It's going to be a challenging environment because of their shortfall in funding at the state level. I would encourage you all to work very closely with the league, the association, the metro mayors to support infrastructure and local option financing as we go forward. And really, to make a real point here, there are discussions taking place, and I know that we may have mentioned this before. The NC First Commission that was appointed by the governor is looking at the long-term challenge that we talked about, the financing that is led by Ward Nye from Wake County, who is also now currently the president of the North Carolina Chamber of Commerce. So there's a nice mix. The North Carolina Chamber of Commerce is also engaged in transportation policy concerns through their Destination 2030. And I apologize, these hyperlinks didn't come through well here. That's the Destination 2030, and it's a coalition focused on new funding structure for transportation in North Carolina. That's the business community, and that's going to be one of our most potent ways, engaging with that. You should also, as part of that, engage with your local chambers of commerce. A lot of you both are engaged here in the Triangle. You have the RTA, which is another mechanism. Really be engaged with them on how we move forward. And I do recommend that you think about multimodal challenges that are important to our urban areas when you talk to them. And then also work with statewide groups such as the North Carolina Public Transportation Coalition or Association, NCPTA. They were tremendously helpful for us for restoring funding for our urban transit systems 2 years ago. They represent rural and urban transit. So they have a foot in all counties across the state. And then be ready to really jump in and support the work in Congress around a national infrastructure investment program with the leadership that we have in David Price and others in our delegation in North Carolina. We should really take advantage of that. When the opportunity presents itself, we should all go arm in arm to support that. So, and then the last point, and you all know this is North Carolina, where the urban-rural dynamic is as pronounced as anywhere in the United States. I encourage you, both in the region and then across the state, and maybe even more so across the state, work with MPOs, RPOs to build an urban-rural coalition to support the changes we need in transportation. So I'll stop there, Commissioner Jacobs and Hutchinson.
Great. Thank you, Bo. And thank you, Kevin. What a great report. Oh, great. You've got your information up here. I know there are a lot of questions from our members that they would love to ask, but unfortunately we just don't have time. So you can see their email address right there. We'll leave that on the screen for a while. If anyone would care to contact Bo and Kevin, please feel free to do that after our meeting. And once again, let me just say what great leadership we have in Bo Mills and Kevin Leonard and Congressman Price. And we're so fortunate to have you in place. And Kevin, I apologize for missing you in my opening comments. I didn't see you on the screen, but Kevin's a great friend too and a great leader at the North Carolina Association of County Commissioners. All right, members, we're going to quickly move on to our next item, which is a status and guidance on policy priority revisions, starting with Invest for Success and Demand Management Technologies with Chris Lucasina.
Thanks, Commissioner. We'll jump right into this one for the sake of time. Before the meeting, you all should have gotten 2 reference documents. One I think you're all familiar with. It's the black background document, the Transportation Policy Priorities document as adopted. And the second, which is a white background, is the Policy Priorities Revision Guide. And that guide will go into more detail than what we're going to cover in today's presentation. With the idea being that we'll follow up on any revisions to these policy priorities at the individual MPO meetings, and then come back to you all together at your next, hopefully your next joint meeting or a future one. So as a quick background and reminder, our policy priorities are the joint policy priorities that have been identified and mutually adopted by our 2 MPOs here in the Triangle. And the idea is to have a more strengthened and combined voice for advocating for mobility improvements in the Greater Triangle region. The guide itself consists of the 7 joint policy priorities. Today, we're going to be talking to you about 3 of them. One, the Invest for Success, I'll talk to you about first. That will be to elaborate a little bit more on that. with some possible updates and a little more meat on the bones, if you will. And then the other two, strengthen support for demand management and technology, and making North Carolina a leader in active transportation investments, are two policy priorities that you have already approved more detailed information on, but we have the opportunity to potentially revise and further that more detailed policy, those more detailed policy priorities. And so with that, we'll jump right in. Aaron, can you go to the next slide, please? So the first one there in red is Invest for Success. And the other ones on the screen there are the other policy priorities that we aren't focusing on today, but are included in the policy priorities document. Again, the darker background. You can go to the next slide, Aaron. And here again, the two highlighted in red we'll be focusing on today with you all. And those that are not highlighted in red on that list, we'd have the opportunity at future meetings to dive into a little bit more. Go to the next slide, Aaron. So Invest for Success. Just a quick reminder on this one. The idea here was to identify those things that could help us and enable us to find and make those critical transportation infrastructure investments across all modes, and hopefully have them happen sooner. And at the time when we adopted this, we were really all focused on a statewide transportation bond. We also went a little bit further and identified the need for creating a new funding source that would be multimodal in nature, and hopefully tied to economic development projects for small towns, rural areas, and along major corridors in our metro areas. So as you all know, the Build NC bonds were passed. They are being utilized, but they were focused on highways. This overall policy priority was really a summary level priority, as opposed to the more detailed priorities that we maybe have in the document. And you know, what we really focused on with this was that passage of a statewide transportation bond. There has been less focus on a new funding source, again, that's multimodal in nature and tied to economic development hubs around the state, particularly in rural areas, and then connecting those hubs to the metro regions. You can go to the next slide, Aaron. So again, the NC Build Bond was approved, limited to highway investments, as mentioned. The NC Moves Plan was which has recently completed public comment. The draft doesn't have a lot of discussion on new funding sources, but it will serve as the statewide transportation plan for about the next 4 or 5 years until we go through another update. Like our metropolitan transportation plans, those are required plans that get updated periodically. And many of you are familiar with the NC First Commission, which was started under former Secretary of Transportation Trogdon and his administration of the department, and it continues on. They've identified several potential funding sources, and I think that their goal is to begin consideration of those funding sources during next calendar year. Just to give you a little taste of some of those, they've really focused on some new and even revised funding sources, like the way DMV fees currently work, revising those, restructuring EV and hybrid vehicle registration fees, revising weight-based fees, and then dedicated sales tax for things like automotive parts that would be for transportation or to transportation from the general fund. They've also looked at some more innovative financing options for our state, things like removing the public-private partnership caps, restructuring the state infrastructure bank, and increasing debt capacity for NCDOT, specifically for, of course, our transportation projects. And then other policy recommendations that they've begun to kind of come up with, things like that would be going towards the realm of user type fees, things like collecting odometer readings, which they already review when you get your annual vehicle inspection. Looking at other taxes or fees that would be associated with e-commerce deliveries, and creating and having the position of a Chief Innovation Officer at NCDOT that would focus both on finance and funding, but also transportation project and program delivery, and trying to continue to push the department towards the cutting edge of innovation in those areas. You can go to the next slide, Aaron. So in that policy priorities update document, you'll see on page 2, there are several links that can provide more information, more detailed information for you on all 3 of those things: the Build NC bonds, the NC Move statewide transportation plan, and the NC First Commission. Potential revisions to this policy priority are up on the screen for you now. So we could expand and develop more detailed a more detailed priority document, like the other 2 policy priorities we'll talk about today. We can do things that would maybe emphasize the 2 key regional needs for a state partner, and that's dedicated recurring state funding as a match for competitive federal funds like the BUILD program, or the CRISI grants, or the capital investment grants that our region continues to look to go after for major transportation projects. And then a state revenue source, again, that would focus on those key hubs, particularly in the smaller towns and rural areas, and then that would help with projects that would connect them to our region and other metro regions across the state. I think if we do revise this or expand on this policy priority, it's going to be important to stress that we want a handshake, not a handout, from our state partner that can be used to match the regional action with the state action. And I think where we have seen success with the state is when we've taken that approach with things, where we go into it as a partnership, hopefully even an equal partnership, as opposed to, again, a handout where we're saying, sort of a mother may I, let's do this together for the benefit of our community and for the state. We can also do a little more to maybe clarify next steps for the MPOs and what local communities can do to pursue successful investments. So those are some of the thoughts that we've had at the staff level for potential revisions to this. Let's go to the next slide, Aaron. So this is, I think, an opportunity now for you all to provide some feedback and guidance to us. The first part of this is going to be a polling question. And I will let, I believe it's Philman who's going to be running the poll. Is that correct? Let me know when you're ready to go, and we'll explain how this is going to work.
All right, so I'll go ahead and launch the poll now. And just a reminder.
Okay. Oh, yeah, just the way this will work is we're going to ask you a question here in a moment, and throughout the rest of this section of the agenda, at the end of each policy priority, we'll ask you a question or two, and we'll utilize this scale to help us understand where the room sort of sits on things. So on this scale of 1 to 5, a 1 means you're very supportive, 3 would be you're more neutral, and a 5 means you're not supportive. Hopefully everyone is with us on that. We'll jump into this. So the question in front of you now, and all of you should see a little a separate window that has popped up with your poll, or an attached window off to one side of your Zoom screen. And the question is, here we go. How supportive would your community be to a state revenue source for multimodal investments serving key job hubs in small towns, rural areas, and along major metro corridors? And we'll give you a few moments here to respond to that in the window. Okay, Philman, how are we doing with responses?
We're at about 30%.
Okay.
So, so just a reminder that the the 105 that you're seeing there include the attendees as well. And we're just trying to get the votes of the panelists, which are about, I think, 45.
Okay.
So we're just about done here.
Yeah, in that case, yep, 39 to 39. I'll go ahead and end it now then. And sharing the results.
All right, so it looks like we had about 75% very supportive, and when you throw in the support, I guess what we'd call a supportive, about 85% of you all are supportive for the first question there. Dedicated recurring state funding to match competitive federal grants, which is pretty high for these sorts of things when we do these in other venues, which is a good thing, I think, and it gives us some good direction on where to focus on some of these. For the second question, detailing a multimodal investment revenue source for job hubs, particularly in small towns and rural areas and along those metro corridors. Actually, even higher support in between a 1 and a 2 rating there. So pretty high support for both of these from you all that are on the call today, and would be, I think, and that's very helpful for us to understand that we're looking in the right direction, and we're in tune with you all to begin to flesh that out a little bit more and bring it back to you all. Does anyone have any questions about the Invest for Success policy priority or either of these two areas that we may look at expanding on and bringing back to you all? And I see in the chat, at least one person says they can't hear me. Can others hear me on the call right now?
Yeah, I can hear you, Chris.
Okay, good.
Yes, Chris.
Okay. Then hopefully we can get the audio for those who are having an issue worked out and move on. Okay, so let's go ahead and go into the next slide, please. Excellent. So I'm going to turn this over to Brandon Watson from staff on CAMPO to run you through this policy priority, which will focus on strengthening support for demand management and technology. Brandon, go ahead.
Thanks, Chris. Good morning, everyone. So our next policy priority is to strengthen support for demand management and technology. As Chris explained earlier, this priority is one of 2 detailed policy priorities in the document and includes some specific focus areas, as you can see here. One is to take the Triangle TDM partnership to the next level. Just as a reminder, that includes more efficiently managing demand on existing roads, increasing the collaboration between NCDOT, MPOs, TJCOG, and local service providers, engaging employers with guidance and tools to encourage the use of alternative modes of transportation, and working with state leaders to reinstate the ability to adopt local TDM ordinances. The second is a technology approach that includes 3 emphasis areas. One is active freeway management to reduce delay and increase reliability, which could include managed lanes or toll facilities. The second is bringing together an integrated community-wide traffic signal system network for congestion management and better incident response. And then last is mobility and regional hubs, such as larger activity centers and using parking, pricing, and other technology strategies. Next slide, please. So going over the status here, this initiative has had some issues this year, as well as some great steps forward. 65 million vehicle trips were avoided, leading to 70 million commute miles reduced and adding up to 58 million pounds of carbon dioxide release prevented. In addition, the Triangle TDM partnership grew to 14 service providers this year who have coordinators that work directly with employers and commuters throughout the Triangle. However, the NCDOT fiscal condition over the last year has had severe effects on the Triangle TDM program. Due to the funding issues, the usual funding allocation was delayed, causing critical staffing and programming issues with service providers and project delays. The TDM plan update has also been on hold and will be revisited in 2021 as the #1 priority has been to secure funding for the program. Though the fiscal year 21 funding was recently secured, there's currently no official commitment to fiscal year 22 funding, which leaves next fiscal year uncertain with anticipation of losing additional TDM coordinators if there is another delay in funding. Next, if you haven't heard, NCDOT is now reorganized to create the Integrated Mobility Division, which includes bicycle, pedestrian, and public transportation modes, as well as transportation demand management now. Their mission is to provide leadership for safe, affordable, and innovative multimodal transportation throughout the state. So we look forward to working with them to expand mobility options. The online telework tool created by the Triangle's regional TDM partnership has also seen a much larger increase in traffic due to COVID. And then earlier this year, the Triangle Region ITS Strategic Deployment Plan update was also completed. The plan aligns regional NTP goals with intelligent transportation systems, or ITS strategies, to move the Triangle towards a more connected and integrated ITS network. The plan includes several recommendations under the responsibility of MPO leadership to align specific action items with the needs and objectives of the region. Multiple ITS projects have also been either programmed or submitted for funding, and there are currently at least 15 projects underway, funded, or submitted in the Triangle that incorporate ITS elements. So this slide, next I'm going to go over some potential revisions to this policy priority. Can you go back one slide, please? There you go. One potential revision to the current policy priorities list that has been discussed is strengthening the language on the importance of a sustained, stable state of revenue source to match MPO and service provider funding commitments. State funding that goes into the TDM program must be renewed annually along with all agreements and contracts. Local service providers rely on state and MPO match funding each year, which creates critical budget issues when funding is delayed or unavailable. The TDM program takes time, and each year and new employer relationship builds on each other. The second revision proposed is to add a specific next step tied to one of the 3 prongs of the technology policy priority, and based on one of the ITS plan's action plan recommendations. An example of a next step discussed would be to establish a regional ITS work group to develop ITS protocols and operational standards. CAMPO also has a study starting in January that will be analyzing the implementation of a regional ITS network in the western half of Wake County. This study will also look at what is needed for broader implementation in other areas of the region. And then the last revision proposed is to specifically incorporate equity considerations into TDM program monitoring and funding decisions. TDM practices support equity in our communities by assisting with access to safe, affordable transportation choices, making the region welcoming to everyone. As new programs are started and growth continues to explode in the Triangle region, equity is a concern that is frequently raised at all levels, from implementation, funding, to monitoring and reporting on current TDM programs. Next slide, please. So as Chris did earlier, we'd like to take the opportunity here to get some feedback from you all on the potential revisions. Philman, let me know when you've got the poll launched. All right, so we've got the poll launched here, and you're going to see 3 questions pop up on this one. And I'll take a moment here to read them out for you. How supportive would your community be to a stronger call for sustained, stable state funding to match MPO funding? And keep in mind when you answer these, 1 is very supportive, down to 5 not supportive at all. The second question is, how supportive would your community be to an MPO next step to begin implementing the regional ITS plan? And then the last question is, how supportive would your community be to incorporating equity into TDM funding decisions and the monitoring program? And I'll give you a few minutes to answer. Looks like we have about 40 panelists, so, or 39 now, filming.
So we're about 3/4 of the way done.
Philman, I think you can go ahead and end it because some of the staff are not voting.
Got it.
All right, so looks like we've got about 76% very supportive for the first question. 48% very supportive for the second question about supportive for implementing the next step to the regional ITS plan. And then about 58% supportive for incorporating equity into TDM funding decisions. And let's go to the next slide. And I think we will turn it over to the next policy priority, to Dale.
So good morning. I guess I will check it since we were right at 10:28. I wanted to check in with our chairs to see if you have some guidance on how to proceed here.
Well,
I would, go ahead,
yeah.
Wendy.
Yeah, I was just going to say, we'll just all try to be conscious of the time and as brief as we can be, but we want to get through the agenda. It's important. And we understand some people may have to drop off. But go ahead, Dale. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, so our next policy priority is to make North Carolina a leader in active transportation investments. Can you go back one slide, Aaron? Okay, thank you. So the current policy document focuses on restoring the state funding for standalone bike and ped projects that was cut in 2013. Looking at lowering local match requirements, prioritizing projects that would serve our interested but concerned cyclists, and modifying the procedures and flexible funding to just make it easier to build and maintain these types of projects. Next slide. There have been a lot of changes since that original document was adopted in 2018. The Complete Streets policy has been revised at the state level and has made a lot of useful changes. The Integrated Mobility Division has been created, which has already been discussed. I think that division will become more of a presence at our MPO meetings, and a lot of good changes will come out of that. There has been funding for non-infrastructure safe routes to school programming in our region from NCDOT. And then there's been a significant planning effort on the Great Trails State Plan, which I think needs to be incorporated into this policy document. There also have been a lot of challenges, some of which have already been discussed earlier, but the crash rate for bike and ped fatalities has actually increased some since we first adopted this in relation to the total number of fatalities in the state. There have been project delays due to the NCDOT funding situation, moving our bike ped projects forward. And then there have also been impacts of COVID, which in some ways we've seen a great increase in bicycle and pedestrian activity. And the challenge is, how do we sustain that? You know, are we going to see biking fall off as it did after the big bike boom in the 70s, or are there some things we can do to maintain that? There's also been a recent study from UNC Charlotte looking at the North Carolina bicycle and pedestrian landscape. And one of the findings of that is that there's less investment in our state than peer states for independent bike and ped projects. Next slide. So really what we're looking at here for some possible revisions to this priority would be to look at ways to increase the safety funding proportional to the number of bike ped fatalities in the state. I think I should mention that North Carolina has been using safety money more than a lot of our other peer states, but at the same time, only about 2% of that money is going toward bike and ped safety improvements, whereas we've mentioned before, the fatalities represent 16, 17%. We also want to continue to monitor the implementation of complete streets policy and the design flexibility that's incorporated therein. And as part of a sort of an equity focus, maintain the emphasis on safe and active routes to school, but also look at providing access to work, food, transit, and parks. So if we can move to the next slide, we have another polling opportunity. And Philman, if you go and bring that up. So we will look at these three questions. How supportive of you how supportive would your community be to increase safety funding, to increase staff time on complete streets policy and design flexibility, and on expanding the focus of our active and safe routes to include work, groceries, transit, and parks. So thank you for your time. And you're also welcome to, if you have any additional thoughts, to put those in the chat as well. Sounds like my neighbor just cranked up his leaf blower just in time for this. Maybe you give about 10 more seconds, Philman.
All right, we'll do.
All right, so on the first question, looks like we have close to 90% of supportive or very supportive on that. Second question, over 90% for the complete streets policy and design flexibility. And the same on the third question. Really, almost everyone was supportive or very supportive of moving forward with this focus. So thank you, and I believe we will turn it over to John Hodges-Koppel now.
Thanks, Dale. If we could go to the next slide, Aaron. And since we are past time, actually, I'd go on to the next slide. We want to just jump real quickly into the MTP. Since we are past time, if folks need to leave, this is something you're going to see a lot of. over the next year in your individual MPO meetings, but wanted to remind you that the 2050 Metropolitan Transportation Plan is underway and how that will move forward, and then focus just a little bit on one piece of what we do in the Metropolitan Transportation Plan, which is create and analyze scenarios. So if you'll go to the next slide, Aaron. So we really have 12 basic steps in the plan. I won't read those off, but this slide and the next one will show those. And those 2 steps that are in red are where we're kind of focusing today. One of the things we do is we create a framework for developing scenarios, those kind of alternatives that the MPOs will be considering. And then once we have that framework agreed to, we actually create individual scenarios for analysis. So if you'll go to the next slide. And the most important point here is down at number 12. And that is that during calendar year 2021 is when there'll be a lot of emphasis within your MPOs on the creation of the plan. And that'll really wrap up late in 2021 or early 2022. Next slide. So this is the most complex slide you'll see all day, which is why we put it at the end. And that is, we want to make sure you kind of understand how the staff proposes to look at your investment options. And what this shows are 2 foundations: a development foundation, which you kind of see on the left side there, if your screen's big enough, and a mobility investment foundation, which you kind of see at the top. And so in creating scenarios, these different ways that we might address land use and transportation, we vary both how development might occur, what we call our development foundation, and then the transportation systems, projects, programs that would serve that development. This is an example that we used from the 2045 MTP. So we might change this based on your guidance. But the idea is that you would have combinations of land use and mobility investments. And the intersection of those creates a scenario. So you see 2 green boxes there, one that's kind of in the middle called community plan scenario. So last time we had one that was based on your individual land use plans in each community, and that had a moderate amount of funding, kind of what we would expect. We then also did a very detailed analysis of an aspirational scenario. What if we pushed our land use to be better aligned with transportation investments? And what if we pushed the amount of funding we thought might be available? We also did less detail on a couple of the other scenarios because it was clear as we were developing them that they would not be ones that were selected. So we didn't want to take them all the way through the process. But the keys for this agenda item is to see, to the degree you understand why we create scenarios, why we look at different combinations of land use and transportation. And then second, that you understand how we would do that if we select this framework. And so let me just spend a little bit of time on the how. What we do at the staff level is try and define different versions of land use that's really from the ground up, right? Most people or all the folks who are on your MPO boards, you also are sitting on your local boards, the ones that deal with land use. So we look at the existing zoning in your communities. We look at your existing plans. And then we also bring forward things that might be above and beyond your plans. So that's one of the things we would do at the staff level, come back to you for feedback. And at the same time, we would develop different networks of transportation investments, partly based on your transportation priorities that you've seen earlier. So let's go to the last slide, Aaron. So we really want to just ask you a couple of initial questions, recognizing that you're going to see these at your individual MPO boards. So we'd like to get an initial sense of your understanding of why we develop and analyze scenarios and your initial understanding of how that would happen. And then we also want you to put in the chat, especially any kinds of issues that you think should be looked at closely as we develop scenarios. So one of the things we try very hard to do is not to have transportation be a siloed issue. We know it relates to other things your community cares about and wants to achieve. And so if you wanted to type in the chat just a word or two on what some of those other achievements or critical concerns are, so that as we start from the staff level bringing back scenarios to you, we can inform you about how scenarios might address those other important issues. So if you'd respond to the 2 questions in the poll and then write in any quick thoughts in the chat, that'll be the last part of what we have for you today. And then Philmon, whenever you think you've got a good number of responses, you can go ahead and close out that poll.
All right, I'll give it about 10 more seconds.
Okay, I know we've had some folks that have had to drop off. And we're getting some good comments in the chat. Appreciate that. Okay. So good. This is very helpful. So it suggests that as we come back to your individual MPO meetings, we're going to need to ramp up some of the education and description of both why scenarios are part of the process and also how the scenarios will be developed, brought back not just for board comment and review, but also broader public engagement, which is something we had planned to do anyway. So again, keep putting stuff in the chat, but we'll turn the meeting back over to the chairs. I think, Aaron, if you'll go to the next slide, which I think is the last slide.
I just want to jump in. Oh, are you finishing up? Is this your last that you want?
Yes, I'm all done.
Go ahead. Oh, you're all done.
I'm all done.
Okay. Well, I just want to, first of all, thank all of the staff, everybody who just presented to us on the MPO policy priorities and recommended ways to strengthen them, revise them, your recommendations for what we should look at there. Also, John, for your very quick overview of a complicated topic. Just very grateful to all the staff, everyone who has stuck around. The next steps will be that each of our MPOs will bring back some revisions to us, our staff, for us to look at in our upcoming meetings to the revisions that were just proposed to us. And also our next steps with our 2050 MTP plan that we will be collaborating on as well. And I would just say also to all of our staff that we also just got some excellent input today at the federal level from David Price, Congressman Price, and from at the state level from Bo Mills and Kevin Leonard. And so I would just encourage you all to also keep that in mind and integrate that as well. That was really helpful. And Sig, do you have any other closing comments before we all sign off here?
Sure. Thank you, Wendy. First, let me just acknowledge that Board Chair of NCDOT, Michael Fox, is on the call today. And Chair Fox, we appreciate you being here and always appreciate your service to the state and to particularly CAMPO and DCHC. I also want to thank staff for a great report. We apologize for being 15 minutes over on the meeting today, but the information today was just outstanding. I really appreciate all of the information, and I thought it was very well done and very well delivered. I also want to appreciate all of our members for taking your time to be with us today. We apologize for not giving more of an opportunity for you to speak more. Hopefully in a post-COVID environment, we'll be able to get back together, which I know we're all looking forward to, but your input today was vital in terms of helping us continue to move this process forward. Finally, let me just wish everyone a wonderful holidays, and please stay safe as you gather with your families. And once again, thanks for everyone for being on the call. And unless there's any other comments, Wendy, I'll just turn it over to you to adjourn.
No, great job. And thank you everyone for being with us today and for the continued collaboration and partnership. Take care.
Thanks, Bo. Thanks, Kevin.
Thanks, Sig. It was great.
Great information.
We'll be in touch soon, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Count
take
on
care.
it. Thank you, Michael, for being with us today.
Thank you, Sig. Great conversation and lots to think about. So looking forward to working with you and everybody going forward in the new year, and hope you guys have a great holiday, and congratulations on your reelection.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. All right. I think it's just pretty much staff. Any thoughts?
Thank you very much. Yeah, if you have any thoughts on things that we could do in the future, we will always welcome hearing it.
It was great. I'll tell you, I was very sincere when I loved the information. I just love the way it was presented. I just love the focus and the direction. So any comments from anyone else, but I just couldn't have been more impressed. It went over, which is fine. I mean, it was good information, and you just have to live with the way things are and move on. So
thank you. It means a lot to hear it. And during the meeting. So I think we're good to shut down. If we do get other comments, we will let you know.
okay. Thank you all. Have a good, safe holidays. Appreciate all your help.
You too. Bye.
Okay, Dale, I can end the meeting. And do you want to download it, or you want me to download it? You're on mute.
Bye, y'all.
Bye, Bonnie. Thank you.
Bye.
Yeah, I'll have to coordinate with Diana.
You can download it once you have the login information, which you do.
Okay.
It'll take a little while to be ready. So I would check back at like 2 or 3 this afternoon because it was a long one.
Yeah. Is there I know that the last thing we asked people to do was put stuff in the chat, which it looks like people did at the end. Is there a way to capture that?
So I actually copied it as well. So
okay, great. Okay.
When Dale downloads the meeting, it will give you a text file of the chat.
Oh, excellent. Okay, cool.
All right, awesome.
I think that's it then. Is that it? John, do we need?
Far as I know.
John, did you keep track of attendees by any chance?
Not the individuals. I just noted how many people were on there. So no, I didn't track the
okay.
I tracked the DCHC board members.
Okay.
I don't
Robert will be able to pull it from the roll call, hopefully, and we might have to help him out with staff and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Pardon?
Go ahead.
He did figure out a way to pull it from the Zoom account, but since this is Dale, I'll send you the instructions on how to pull it from the Zoom account, because since this is Diana's account, I don't want to be passing around the login information. So if you can try to pull the attendee list, that would be helpful.
Okay.
For the minutes.
Great.
Right.
Okay.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.
Have a good one.
Thank you.